Hey, Chicago, what do you say? Coming at you live on a Sunnyside Summer Thursday. This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. Head to sunnyside.shop or the nearest Sunnyside cannabis dispensary and use the code HICHGO for 35% off your first order. Bright buys every day, only for 21 and older or Illinois medical card holders. This is a special show for you. The CHGO Ranks content series is presented by our friends at Miller Lite. We are doing the top 10 Chicago Cubs games of all time. Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Cody Delmendo, Sarah running the ones and twos if she wants to chime in. By the way, the graphics that go along with this hot little package, all Sarah. All Sarah.
Credit to Barb's going to be very happy.
So we're going to get right to it. We're going to go 10 down to number 1. You can probably guess number 1. But maybe you can't guess number 10 and the ones in between there and why we made some of these choices. Some people are going to be mad in the live YouTube chat that we left certain games out. But we'll explain it, and maybe we'll talk about some of those before the whole thing is over. So without further ado, our top 10 Cubs games of all time. Number 10, Cubs Brewers, September 13th, 1998. I'll just call it Move Over Big Mac. I knew we had to get somehow Sammy into this list, right?
We had to, yes.
Sammy had to be in the list. And this is the game Sammy hits 61 and 62. He catches Mark McGwire in the greatest home run race of all time. And then the Cubs win the game on a walk-off home run by Mark Grace in the 10th inning. So let's just say Wrigley was electric.
Yeah, I can imagine. I would have been almost 2 years old. 2 weeks away from.
That's the hard part of the list. Is not everybody's alive for every game, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we were looking back at it the other day and watched the replay, and like I'd forgotten that it was the Move Over Big Mac You Got Company call. But that's like such a big call, and like that's like memorable call in Cubs history, and obviously what the '98 season represented for the Cubs, for baseball, the home run chase, all that, and. This was not just Sammy Sosa hitting 61 and 62, but a big comeback in the 9th, Mark Grace, another bigger name. I mean, he just got inducted to the Cubs Hall of Fame last year, right? So a big name in team history, hits the walk-off home run in extra innings. Like that's, as far as just games go, that's a great game. And then the meaning behind it is
I would guess the call, as you were saying, is if we did a top 10 calls in Cubs history, Hey would be on there, Swung On Belted would be on there. The easy ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy cow, obviously. But that call would be on there, and so would Here Comes the Hook.
Yeah.
Those are like actual play-by-play calls that I will never forget.
Yeah. And anytime Len Casper yelled, like voice crack when he said Cubs win, or like Cubs win, it's like voice crack.
Yeah.
Those are good too.
Cubs win.
Yeah. I mean, I've said this so many times, man. Like this season alone, it saved the game of baseball, what this guy helped do. So that home run race was something that, people will be talking about forever.
Yeah.
And, it's a good number 10. You can argue other ones to be there. And once we get to the end, I think you can certainly make the argument.
Yep.
But if you're talking about the Chicago Cubs and you don't have something related to Sammy Sosa in this list, then you messed up. So this is good with me. I mean, I was, 1998? I was 7 years old, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This is the year that I, became a fan of the Cubs when I was a kid. And it was it's not even that I was a fan of the Cubs. I was just a fan of Sammy Sosa.
Right.
Because he hit balls onto Waveland. And, that, when you're a kid and you just see a guy belt like moonshots like that, and, it just... You want to keep watching it. And so I'm not the only one that feels that way. So that was a season that created a new generation of Cubs fans.
You could argue that this list should only be postseason games.
Sure.
Or the list should only be regular season games, but that's not what it is. Greatest games in Cubs history. To me, this was an electric one. We can argue later whether or not it should have been number 10 or something else. You ready for number 9?
Yeah, let's do it. It's one of my favorites.
Number 9, the 2015 National League Wild Card game. Cubs-Pirates. Cubs win 4-0, And this, of course, was October 7th of 2015. You could just call it the Arrieta game. Was it a no-hitter? No, but it's the game where he talked trash to Pirates fans on social media beforehand, and then he went out and backed it up.
Yeah,
complete game shutout.
Wasn't it like the Pirates fans had made that list of like cheers or whatever?
To rattle Arrieta.
Sea of black.
And he was like, it's like whatever you do, just know it doesn't matter. Or something like that. Like, that was great. And obviously, he went out 9 shutout, 11 strikeouts. Like you said, look, he completely backed up when he talked trash to Pirates fans on social media. And this was peak Jake Arrieta. Like, obviously he won the Cy Young that year, and like, he threw no hitters at points and stuff. But like, this was the game where like that. I don't know if Jake Arrieta could pitch a better game than that, just because like, again, the trash talk coming into it, the enormity of the moment, because the wild card games weren't. That's a pretty new thing at that point, right? It's like the second or third year of it. So like, that's a win or go home game. Yeah. Like the enormity, the importance of that one lone game in the playoffs. That was just an even bigger moment, and Jake steps up.
And I love the picture we used for this graphic, because that game, Pirates fans and the team itself were so frustrated by Jake Arrieta that they threw at him when they knew that the game was over. That's when you knew you had him. Not only was it Sean Rodriguez fighting the Gatorade cooler, but the Pirates, like the clowns they were that night, throwing on purpose at Jake Arrieta, because he was just shoving it down their throat on the road in the Cubs' first playoff game since 2008. Is one of my all-time favorites. I could probably argue it should be higher, but at 9, it's fine. It's one of my favorite games to go back and look back and watch. Jake Arrieta was on another level. I mean, that 2015 second half, he had a 0.75 earned run average from like the All-Star break on. It went into 2016, as we know, but that game was probably the peak of that run that he was on. That quite literally, we talk about other guys and like how when they're on a good run, we're like, how close is it to Jake Arrieta in 2015? Like, that was the peak.
Yeah. Well, it's because like you've like, as far as like overall career, like Jake's not near the top names of all time.
He's not a Hall of Famer.
No. But if we're talking about peaks, like there are few that did what Jake Arrieta, especially that last half of 2015, to basically win, because he wasn't on the All-Star team. He won the Cy Young in that second half, basically. And he had been good for the year, but basically won in that second half. And then going into 2016, like few pitchers in baseball have ever had that kind of run. But Jake Arrieta
nobody has. For a short stretch, he was the best hitter or best pitcher in baseball history.
And then
he
obviously,
was that good.
Obviously, Kyle Schwarber, 3 RBIs and
the home run into the Allegheny.
Like
into the river.
Yeah.
You know what else? It's because it's a postseason game, and that is the start of the golden era of Cubs baseball. That game, Arrieta right there started the golden era of Cubs baseball.
That's when it's like announced, like the Cubs are here. They're
did anybody really think they were going to the NLCS that year?
No.
I didn't. I planned my wedding during it.
Well, no one thought they were going to make the playoffs.
When Jake threw that game, I was like, we better see if we can get some TVs for the reception.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure enough.
That game, it was an announcement that the Cubs were here and they were coming.
Yeah. And
you knew Cardinal fans, they were scared going into that NLDS. And, and we don't have to talk about the end of 2015, but that was one of my more favorite playoff runs I've ever watched, and not just Cubs history, but in Chicago sports history.
And I want to point out Travis Hout, his comment in here, like that was a damn good Pirate squad. He dominated basically end of their brief window of competitiveness. You don't forget, like the Cubs won 97 games a year. The Pirates won 98. Like, they were the second best team in baseball.
The Central hasn't been that good since.
Not even close. Like the Pirates finished ahead of the Cubs in the standings that year. Like that's how good that Pirates team was. And he went out and shut them out. Like it was. Yeah.
Then Jake Arrieta flexed.
Yeah. There you go.
Probably cut those sleeves off after the game.
And then did some Pilates to cool down.
Did some Pilates.
Did some push-ups pregame though.
All right, so we have 10 and 9, greatest Cubs games of all time. And here is number 8. It's another postseason game. Cubs-Giants. Cubs win 6-5. Game 4 of the 2016 NLDS, October 16th, 2016. The Cubs trailed 5-2 entering the ninth inning. So
Mm-hmm.
you have the comeback factor of a postseason game in what turns out to be the greatest season in Cubs history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the significance of this game is more about, if you look at it, if they had lost this game, they were down 5-2 entering the ninth inning. If they had lost that game, they're going back to Wrigley Field, Johnny Cueto versus John Lester, 108-year curse on the line, best team in baseball that year. The pressure that would have been on them to win Game 5 on their home field, the fact that the rally in the ninth inning that night in San Francisco, I just remember being in my apartment when it happened, absolutely losing my mind. I could not believe that they not only came back, but actually finished the job to win the game. All started, I want to say, was it Brian and Rizzo, followed by Zobrist?
It was Bryant, yeah. Bryant singles, Rizzo walks, Zobrist doubles to score Bryant and move Rizzo to third. And then that was like the chess game, the
Didn't they
pinch
walk
hitting and stuff
Hayward?
like that.
Four
No.
run top of the ninth. Baez was the eventual star,
Baez was
right?
the eventual.
Yeah.
So that was the Chris Coughlin pinch hitting for Russell.
Yes.
And then whoever got the Giants brought in and then brings in Wilson as the second pinch hitter. Like, it was that's what I'm talking about, that chess move.
Okay.
Then Contreras singles, drives in two. Hayward tries to bunt him over and then ends up being an out at second, but then Hayward gets to second on an error, I think, a throwing error, and then Baez with the go-ahead run in the ninth. Yeah, and that was – and then obviously Aroldis Chapman strikes out the side in the bottom of the ninth. But, it was – you lose that game, you go home against Johnny Cueto, who was really good at the time. I mean, whatever game was it? Was it game one when it was 1-0 on Javi Baez's lone?
I mean, that series was incredible.
Home run to the basket. But that's what I'm saying is you're going game 5, loser goes home against a guy who held you to one run on a home run and the first time he faced you at home. That's you to avoid that and just go right to the next round. Not have to worry about that was as big as anything.
And the narrative at that time was with the Giants was like the whole even year thing, because they had won multiple World Series on like even years in 2012 and 2014, and like here they are again in 2016. Are they going to make another run? Everyone talking about Madison Bumgarner being one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time. All these things, and for them to win that game, like the Giants bullpen really messed up in that one. But that game and that series in general, you mentioned the Baez home run in game 1 and in the one rendition we got of Cueto versus Lester. Game 2, Travis Wood hits a 2-run homer. Kyle Hendricks pitches that game. He also gets a RBI single, I believe, in that game as well. So that game's kind of chaotic. Then game 3, they go to San Francisco, goes to extra innings. The Cubs lose that one. That game would be talked about a lot more if they had won the game. But like Chris Bryant hit a game-tying homer in the 9th inning. Albert Almora had an incredible catch in right field. But again, lost in extras. So for them to come back in game 4, down and be trailing, make that comeback,
3 runs in the ninth,
just that even emphasizes even more just how important that game is in Cubs history.
You need special moments, lucky moments, flip of a coin moments to win a World Series and break your drought. This was one of them. They were that close to losing and moving on that maybe the championship never even happens in 2016, and it sends them to their second straight NLCS, something I never thought would happen in my entire lifetime. Like, if you said that to me, I just would say, yeah, right, whatever. More CHGO ranks of the top 10 Cubs games of all time on the way, but first, Ray Chevy ranks number 1 if you're looking for a new ride. Choose Ray Chevrolet as your first draft pick and find the right way to get a new Chevy and the right price for you. Visit our partner this July to shop the Freedom to Save sales event going on all month long at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you're always able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Plus, find the perfect tailgate vehicle. Right now, get $12,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 Chevrolet Silverado, or lease the new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $188 a month for 24 months, or cruise into July your own way and shop over 125 vehicles they have priced under $20,000 right now, under $20,000. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you already know about Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about right now, you can expect to see the very same price when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. So shop the Freedom to Save sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963.
There's no better way to finish the rest of this podcast than enjoying it with a Penrose seltzer. My opinion.
Cheers.
Yeah, right. Cheers. Penrose Brewing out of Geneva, Illinois. They have these seltzups, as they call them, hard seltzers with real fruit, led by Lemon Seltzup, a national gold medal winning hard seltzer with real lemons. They created our unique twist on a lemon shake-up with a house-made hard seltzer and a pureed lemons for a throwback to warm weather and county fairs. Also available is the Lemon Tee-Up, a half-and-half inspired hard seltzer. Just released this year is the Transfusion Seltzup, inspired by a popular golf cocktail with grape, ginger, and lime. Penrose is available at your local beverage retailer, or you can visit Penrose's taproom in Geneva. For more information, go to penrosebrewing.com or follow them on social media at Penrose Brewing.
The CHGO Ranks content series presented by Miller Lite. It is the top 10 Chicago Cubs games of all time. We've already done number 10. We've already done number 9. We've already done number 8. Number 7, a game that I will never forget, and you guys will. Game 1 of the 1984 NLCS is number 7 on our list. The Cubs beat the Padres 13-0 at Wrigley Field. This was the first playoff game for the Cubs in 39 years. The first playoff win for the Cubs in 39 years. It was the first time in my life I thought the Cubs can be in the postseason. Think about that. I was 12, and I was like, still waiting to see the Cubs even play a playoff game. And at my school, every classroom, again, this is before cable and all those other crazy things, there was no Twitter, there was no social, there was no internet.
Was there AC yet?
There was air conditioning and indoor plumbing. But what happened was every classroom in my school, it wasn't even questioned because nobody would have gone to school. Every classroom watched that game, period. Every classroom had a big box television that they would wheel in, and everybody sat and watched the game. And you would hear the rooms down the hallway cheering for different things. Basically what happens is it's this first game, and then the Cubs hit all these home runs. Dernier, Matthews, Rick Sutcliffe, who was pitching the game, hits a home run. And then the Red Barons rounding the bases. Ron Say homers in the game. And Sutcliffe gives up 2 hits over 7 innings. Again, it was 13-0. It's the first time I ever thought in my life, wait a minute, we can be good and we can win? Like, playoff baseball was unthought of in my lifetime. So, for me, this is easily one of the greatest games of all. The series didn't go the way you wanted to because you didn't have lights. You had to play the first 2 at home and then go on the road, and then they lose the 3 in San Diego. But this game, like the Super Bowl for the Bears, total domination.
Yeah, I mean, you think of that 84 season, and there's another game we will discuss that, even recently, Bob Costas was talking about being the game that kind of launched the Cubs into, like, they're real. Like, they're actual contenders this year.
Sure.
And like you said, 39 years. They hadn't won a playoff game, been in a playoff game in 39 years. And then they go.
Since the World Series in 45.
Yeah, Rick Sutcliffe wins a Cy Young that year. He starts that game, and he pitches lights out. And yeah, I mean, 13-0, you don't think of that as like, oh, this is such a great game, right? But I think it also is the magnitude of what that meant for the Cubs, for the organization. 39 years. Like, the curse, I don't know, was the curse of the Billy Goat talked about yet? Like, was that a thing?
Sure,
by then?
the Billy Goat was a thing. The Black Cat in '69 was a thing. The Cubs are never going to do it was basically my whole life. They were the total lovable losers.
So there you go.
Bootzilla in the live YouTube chat says, this is a good game, but they didn't win the series and lost in tragic fashion. Yes, but we're talking about the game.
Yeah,
and that's the
game.
That's
and that game was as high as I got in my childhood. I don't mean actually high. Shout out to Sunnyside. I mean that was the peak of that game was the peak of my Cubs fandom in my childhood.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's like there's obviously different games for different generations of fans. You have that one. Like you have as far as the peak of like you really thought it was going to happen at that point, like when they won that game. Like
it'd be like the Bears going to the Super Bowl this year for you. You'd be like, what?
I hope.
And then winning it.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
And not facing Peyton Manning.
Yeah. And so that's where I'm like, it's just the magnitude of that game, what it meant for the organization, for fans, for all of that. Like that was just an enormous game in and of itself. And then, obviously some of the characters that were in it were fun too. It's just like, it's a big game in this organization's history.
As someone who didn't get to watch it because I didn't exist yet, I would just like to know, or I would like to go back and look at all like the records for every season, those 39 years prior, and see how many records that are in there that you could argue would make the playoffs in today's playoff format. Yeah. Because that's what, like, it's a big deal. Like, it's ridiculously sad how they went 39 years without making the playoffs, but it was also like the playoff format was significantly different back then.
All they had to do was win 3 games and go to the World Series. This was one. They were 2 wins away from the World Series. Right. And they won the next one. They were 1 win away from the World Series.
Right. But, yeah, I mean, I'll say this. The way people talk about the 1984 team, I believe, is how I will probably talk about the 2015 Cubs whenever I'm, like, 50. Because the 2015 Cubs were the team that I, like, legitimately fell in love with. Like, I know they won in 16, but that's like, it's basically the same team. But the way people look at the 2015 Cubs, I feel like is similar to 1984. Like, you legitimately felt like that team was on the rise and was going to go win a World Series. So,
first playoff game in almost 40 years. For it to be yours, the same feeling, you would have to eliminate all the Sammy years. Yeah, like there was nothing positive about Cubs baseball until this happened. Yeah. Nothing. All it was turning on a game and seeing a game, but there was no hope that they were going to win anything. You hope Dave Kingman hit a home run once. That's all you were getting out of a Cubs baseball game until this game.
By the way, to answer Cody's question real quick, I mean, we could say what, like 84 wins is what because that's Cubs had 83 last year, didn't make the playoffs. 4 times they won at least 84 games in that 39
yikes, brother.
Year period.
That's what I'm saying. There was nothing.
My grandfather went through a lot of pain, man.
They were the lovable losers, or they were just the losers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had never looked through it, like that, but I do know that the playoff format was a lot different. So anyway, yeah, big moment, big game.
Okay, number 6. We're almost halfway through. St. Louis Cardinals, Chicago Cubs. Cubs win 6-4. It's game 4 of the NLDS, October 13th, 2015. So it's the 2015 NLDS, and this is maybe the loudest I've ever heard Wrigley Field, except for clinching the pennant. When Schwarber puts the ball on the video board on top of it, that's as loud as I've heard Wrigley. I watched this game with David Kaplan and Todd Hollinsworth in the PNC Club because we were doing post-game stuff, and I was going to do locker room stuff. But Kelly Kroll was doing a lot more of the day-to-day Cub stuff. So I was just going to get whatever sound we needed to get. So I got to kind of watch this like a fan, and it wasn't just winning a playoff series. It was beating the Cardinals.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. This would have been my freshman year of college. I don't remember where I was. I wasn't 21 yet, so obviously I wasn't at a bar. But I do remember watching this series, and again, it was like we talked about the Pirates finished ahead of the Cubs that year. Obviously, the Cardinals finished ahead of the Cubs as well with 100 wins, I think.
Yeah, they had like 100 or 101 wins.
Yeah, I think it was 100 wins. And, for first time meeting in the postseason between these two teams, two of the biggest rivals in any sport, not just in baseball. And yeah, like this is the game. When we talk about how the 2015 wild card was like the game that's like was the coming out party, this was the one that was like, if you had any semblance of this team could actually win the World Series this year, it was that game. It was knocking off the Cardinals in that game, and it was huge. I mean, Schwarber's home run on the video board. Everything that went into that game and winning that series. What did we say? It was the first
time they clinched a playoff series ever at Wrigley Field. Yeah. Think about that, because 84 didn't happen.
Yeah.
94 didn't happen. 03, the one series they won was on the road. Like, they clinched on the road. Like, first time they ever clinched a series
Ever
at
Wrigley Field.
The quote by, or the call by Pat Hughes, I wish you all could be here right now, or something like that.
And before the last strikeout,
yeah. When Hector Rondon got, I mean, I may have shed a tear that day. I may have shed a tear. I don't remember being, at that point in my life for sports, I don't think I remembered ever being so happy, other than when Derrick Rose won MVP, related to sports at least. Like, just winning that series, the run that team was on. Like I said earlier, that's one of my favorite. The 15 Cubs, if 15 Cubs don't happen, we don't get 2016. I fully believe that. And so that's why they have a special place in my heart. And when they won that game, Schwarber hitting the ball on the video board, the fact that they just were hitting tanks that game, and even the game before that, the crowd at Wrigley was on another level. Yeah. And when Schwarber hit that home run, I remember the camera flashes to the crowd, and there's just this one random guy with like his hands on his face, just losing his mind, brother. That's what I was doing, except I was at my job trying to not lose my mind. Yeah. But in my head, I was losing my mind. And yeah, man, like that was so fun. That game. It's up there, man.
I remember it being a beautiful sunny day. I remember the champagne celebrations afterwards, coming out of the dugout. And it's when you realize or are reminded at that time that most of the people in Chicago are people that grew up covering sports, are originally Chicago sports fans. And that while we're supposed to be impartial covering some things, deep down, they're Cubs fans. I remember looking over and Mark Silverman's yelling at me from AM 1000, like, Luke, and we're just kind of like thumbs up and then, okay, back to work, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a really fun moment. And for me, it was beating the Cardinals made it so much more enjoyable. And the one moment, Schwarber's home run, I think will go down as one of the most memorable home. If we want to do the top 10 home runs in Cubs history, I don't think there's any way you could leave Schwarber video board off that list.
Or just moments, you know?
I mean, they left it up there.
Yeah. It's still there.
No, yeah.
Maybe.
It's absolutely just a huge game. Again, in this organization's history, when you're talking about calling it the golden era, like the launching into that era where the Cubs were legitimate contenders for a few years on end, which hadn't happened in, I don't know, 70 years since they were losing World Series a lot. Like this was absolutely like, again, you knocked off the Pirates in the wild card game. That was great. You just knocked off your biggest rival, the best team in the major leagues in a 5-game series. And you managed to do it at home or at Wrigley Field for the first time ever. Again, we talk about magnitude of games. Great game on its own. It was on its own was a great game, but then add the magnitude of what that game meant, and it's huge.
I agree.
Gary says that they removed it a couple years ago.
They did. It's down now.
Yeah, they didn't keep it out there forever.
I don't remember hearing about that. So
in my mind, in lore, it's don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. That ball's still up there.
They actually never found it in lore. It's just there. No one ever found it.
Yeah.
So what game is next? Well, you're going to find out in a minute. But first, when you go to the next legendary Cubs game, make sure you are wearing what else? Shady Rays, baby.
Oh, yeah, brother.
Shady Rays, quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all of your outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, and you're bound to find one in your team's favorite colors. Look at the blue ones I'm wearing now. They probably have one in Cubs colors. Maybe you're a Bulls fan, you like red color. They might have those too. I would tell you this. I wear them driving, fishing, golfing, and of course, when I'm just turning heads, walking down the sidewalk. Like I say, vibe with me. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. Ryan found out like this. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. with personal and fast support. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use the code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by more than 300,000 people.
You know, Luke, we're always driven by the search for better. Everyone is. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Now, thinking about this list, how long and arduous, how many hours we put in, I kind of wish we could have just hired someone to do it for us.
Right.
And if we would have done that, I obviously would have used Indeed. No doubt about it.
Of course.
You leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast, and listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. That's ALLCITY. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed.
All right. The CHGO Ranks content series presented by Miller Lite, the top 10 Chicago Cubs games of all time. Luke Stuckmeyer, Ryan Herrera, Cody Delmendo, ranking them down. We are down to number 5.
Top 5. Yeah.
Another game against the Cardinals. Top 5. 12-11. Cubs over the Cardinals in 11 innings. What is it? The Sandberg game. You say it to any Cubs fan, they know what it is. It's got to be on your list. Now, you might say, well, it's more of an individual performance. No. Again, this propelled that team into the 84 playoff run, the first one, as we mentioned, why it was so important in 39 years. The Sandberg game happens to come on number 23's day, right?
Yeah, it was
the 23rd of June, and we just celebrated it with a statue over the season. Sandberg, 2 game-tying home runs off of Bruce Sutter, rest in peace, the former Cub, who goes on to also be a Hall of Famer. But it put Rhino on the map.
Yeah, I mean, it's called the Sandberg game. Like, it's like Bob Costas said, how many players have a game, like a game named after them? There's not, obviously not many. They have moments and they have careers and all that stuff, but like to have a specific game, that's obviously, that just goes to show you like what you did in that game, what it meant for you. Like Ryan Sandberg, obviously one of the greatest Cubs of all time. Like there's no doubt about that. A Hall of Famer. Again, you mentioned he got a statue. Not many Cubs have had their statues. Number retired, all that good stuff. But not only was it this the game that launched the Cubs into like national consciousness of contenders, but this was the game that put Ryan Sandberg on the map as far as MVP caliber player. Like that, because this was like the national game of the week, right, on NBC. So he was playing on national TV and then does what he did, 2 game-tying home runs off Hall of Fame closer Bruce Sutter. Like this was Ryan Sandberg's day, and again, a reason why it's called the Sandberg game.
If you go back and watch it, Cody, on some of those old DVDs that you can buy, one of the funniest things about it is people are standing on the top of the dugouts. Like Wrigley was a different animal back then.
Yeah.
Everybody was shirtless in the bleachers, and people, there was no blue hair telling you like get down in the front row and put your hand like they let you do whatever you want, and people went crazy in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the era that I've gotten to watch and the winning years and the World Series and all that, and like out of all of that, I don't think there's a game for someone like that sticks out like this that people are going to be talking about in 40 years, you know, in 40 years, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I think that just speaks to the not only the era, because I think Bob Costas also mentioned too the fact that game was like on national television. You couldn't watch baseball or sports in general as easy as you can today. You know, everyone in the world was watching this game, or everyone in America was at least. Like, I think those things go into this, and yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see it, but this definitely put him on the map, and there's a reason that he's one of the most beloved Cubs ever.
And then obviously everyone forgets Dave Owen scored Leon Durham with a game-winning single in extra innings.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's again Sandberg's game, Sandberg's day, propelled him into MVP conversation and propelled his Hall of Fame Cubs career from there. Like, that's,
you have to put the game in its context of when it was and what it meant.
mm-hmm.
And if you want to compare it to one of the 4 World Series wins, no, in reality it doesn't stack up. But that's not what it is. Like, at that time, that was as good as it gets. So we have just a few regular season games that made the list. There's one right there. We had the Sammy home run, 61 and 62. Now we have the Sandberg game, and then now to number 4, Game 5 of the 2016 World Series. Cubs beat Cleveland 3-2 on October 30th, 2016. The only World Series win at Wrigley Field since 1945.
That's still insane. How long it took for them to win a game at home. Just to be in the World Series in general, but to win a game at home. And it also, like, some of those games weren't great games in that World Series game. Like, this is a pretty good game in general.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 3 runs in the 4th?
Yeah. Chris Bryant hit a homer
3-2
off
game.
Trevor Bauer early in this game, and I believe the moment he hit that home run, the Cubs never trailed in the World Series again. And at the time, trailing 3-1 in the series.
Right.
And I'll just be honest with y'all, like, going into that game, I was as down as I've ever been in my entire life. I thought we were cooked. And I was going to have to continue to hear about the curse, how the Cubs can't get it done, this and that. Like, if I was ever ready to be hurt again, that night was the night. And John Lester showed up, shoved it down Cleveland's throat. You got some timely offense, and Chapman closed it out. It was, and on top of it, it's the one World Series win they had at Wrigley. I was in the neighborhood for Game 3, and I was so depressed after. I think they lost 7-2 in that game. So then they lost Game 4 as well. Like, going into Game 5, it was like, I think people still had hope just because it was the World Series and this team had shown up in adversity many times, but. Man, like,
you were facing elimination and a 3-1 series lead in the World Series.
Yeah, this was the
You're
first.
Right. There was never more tension at Wrigley Field than there was in that game there.
Especially when you're down already 1-0 in the 4th inning. Like, Lester did pretty well. 6 innings, 2 earned runs. But then the 4th inning, they scored 3. Like you said, never trail in the World Series again. But, like, that was the first of 3 straight, like, win this one or you lose the World Series games. And then you had already lost 2 at home at Wrigley Field when the place had been rocking. And now you're at, like, the lowest fans probably have felt throughout the entire playoffs. And, John Lester pitched as well. But then Chapman, 2 2/3, 1 hit, 4 strikeouts. Like, once he came in, and that's basically what he did for the Cubs when they traded for him that year and on. But when he came in, he completely shut down that offense, didn't give them any hope for the rest of the game. It was 2 2/3 scoreless, and was as big as anyone in getting them to that Game 6, getting them back to Cleveland.
Yeah, just one of the all-time games.
Yeah,
I mean, you could have put that right after winning it. It was that important, and it meant that much. And again, it's the only World Series win at Wrigley Field since 1945. All right, number 3 is another one of those regular season games.
It has to be on here.
Well, and normally I would say, regular season game, but there was special meaning to the Sandberg game, and there was special meaning to that Sammy game. This was an individual achievement, but it was so spectacular that it has to be on the list. Mm-hmm. The greatest baseball game ever pitched by one guy. One guy, Kerry Wood, 20 strikeouts in a game, May 6th, 1998. There's a flag for it at Wrigley Field. Wood ties the major league record with 20 strikeouts against a loaded Houston Astros team. It's another fun game to go back and watch on DVD. The crazy part is, was 5th career start.
Yeah.
You think of Paul Skeens right now and be like, oh man, he had a great start to his major league career. He didn't strike out 20 in his fifth game.
Yeah, in his 5th start.
20.
One
and
hitter.
it was against one of the best teams in baseball.
And the one hit that was allowed should have been called an error.
Yes, it should.
So
it
you
should have
can
been a no-hitter.
argue, you really
Yeah,
legitimately
no-hitter.
can argue that it was the greatest pitched game ever by one individual just because 20 strikeouts and was one hit away from throwing a no-hitter.
Yeah. No,
I don't think he walked anyone, so maybe it would have been a perfect game.
Well, the error.
I think he.
Well, yeah, if the error, if it was then it wouldn't have been a perfect game.
It
My
still
bad.
would have been a no-hitter.
hitter.
It still has the best game score for 9 innings of any game pitched.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 105 game score, which is like, you think about it, because obviously guys have thrown perfect games, right? But you add, it was just the one hit along with record tying 20 strikeouts, like, along with the fact that he was, as Luke said, 5 starts in his major league career. Like, the fact that he came out and did that, and like, we've talked to Jake Munowski, like his dad was the guy that with the Cody flags. And like, that's such a big memorable moment in Cubs history.
The bleachers,
and the bleachers. Like, he ran
The
out
signs,
of
the
ran
K
out of K
signs,
flags because he didn't have 20 of them.
Had to start making them up.
Yeah, and so like, this was, as far as individual performances, and like, I know Gary's been yelling at us in the chat about not having a couple other ones in there, and we'll talk about them.
Yeah, we'll talk about it because you can only have 10.
Yeah, but like, this was, you're talking about the game that, and you know, game score is one of those stats that people probably don't care about. This has the highest game score of any game pitched. Like, no hitters, whatever you want in Cubs history. Like, this is the best pitched game in Cubs history.
Yeah,
it has to be.
It's better.
It's the best pitched game you've ever seen. If anybody watches it, you can't argue anything else.
Yeah.
Forget perfect games, whatever. It's the most dominating pitching performance in baseball history. And you look at the guy, and he's just a baby face.
Actually, no walks, by the way, for
no walks.
No walks. Just
game.
would have had
And
the
then,
air.
you know,
and had that error not been made, that would have been. Could you imagine a 20 strikeout perfect game?
Wow.
Can you imagine?
I mean,
that?
it was just unbelievable watching it. And here comes the hook.
I was gonna mention
Everybody
that,
knew what was coming.
Mhm.
It's what you now call a sweeper, but at that time it was like watching. Now, what do they play that game? Gyro ball, where it's the wiffle ball that you can just do ridiculous video game things. That's what it looked like he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the part about it was like him talking, like, obviously throughout the years talking about that, like, his bullpen was awful. He would
Right,
say,
yeah.
like,
He
they
didn't
would have,
feel
like,
good.
they didn't throw a strike at all. He just shut it down because he was like, I'm not going to get any better than what I'm at right now. I don't feel good. And then comes out and does what he does against the Astros. Like, that
Craig
was,
Biggio, Jeff Bagwell.
Yeah, like
in
some
that
good
lineup.
hitters in that
I
lineup.
think Lance Berkman was in that
Moises
lineup.
Alou, Derek
It
Bell.
was
not
Biggio,
Berkman, but
Biggio,
those two.
Bagwell,
Yeah.
Bell.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if Berkman was
Moises
on that team.
Alou
No,
was in that
Berkman
one,
wasn't
too.
there yet.
Not
No,
yet.
Moises Alou was on the team. Yeah.
Pre
Now-
Cubs.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to take this one out of the list, the only way I can do that is by saying, well, it's not as important as a postseason game. Same thing goes for the Samber game. Same thing goes for Sammy. Those are the 3 regular season games that we put into our list. I'm willing to listen to the argument if you want to say only postseason games matter, but those 3 were so spectacular that we thought they deserved top 10 status. All right, number 2. Dodgers-Cubs. Cubs win 5-0. Game 6 of the 2016 NLCS. Cubs clinch their first National League pennant in 71 years. That's all.
Yeah.
Kyle
At
Hendricks,
home.
man. Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah, Kyle. This is
Against
like
Kershaw.
early Kyle Hendricks too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he was what, 3rd in Cy Young voting this season, or 2nd, whatever it
Something
was.
like that, yeah.
So obviously he had a great year, but this is still like young Kyle Hendricks. He's not Kyle Hendricks as we know him now. He's still young Kyle Hendricks, and he's going up against Clayton Kershaw, who's one of the best pitchers in the game at this point. And he outduels him, and with 7 1/3 shutout. Wilson and Rizzo hit homers off Kershaw, and was a 5-0. And then, I mean, everyone like talks about Joe Buck and they hate national broadcasts because they don't think Joe Buck is enthusiastic. And part of it is the fact that he has to be pretty unbiased and like whatever. But the fact that the crowd was so loud, they actually made him yell that the Cubs had won the pennant. The fact that it made him yell that at the top of his lungs, or else he wouldn't be able to hear him.
Yeah.
That's how big that game was. The fact that it was just at Wrigley Field, but just how monumental that game was in Cubs history. It has to be where it's at.
I remember exactly where I was when they got that double play to end the game, the ground ball to Russell. And I think every Cubs fan remembers exactly where they were when this game ended. And when Joe Buck makes the call, the camera pans to Theo Epstein hugging his wife or whoever, and the boys going, like, celebrating at beautiful historic Wrigley Field, winning the pennant. It's just something that I'm never going to forget or like take for granted. Like, I could sit here and complain about all these years since then that have been disappointing, but like, so many people at that point in time had just craved for the Cubs to just go to a World Series, let alone win one. You know, like that game was so special. And I think legitimately everyone felt like they were winning that game that night. No one felt like they were losing that game because of how they came back in that series.
They were down 2-1, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they were down 2-1, and then a Ben Zobrist bunt ignited the offense somehow in LA, and they scored a bunch of runs. They come back to Wrigley up 3-2, or 3-1, whatever it was. I can't math. And they dominated the Dodgers that night. They from top to bottom. 5-0? Like, Kyle Hendricks shoved it, and he did exactly what we've talked about, what he does over the course of his career. In big games, he shows up and pitched one of the greatest games that he is ever going to pitch in his career. Like, it's one of
the two
those
biggest
moments.
Games in Cubs history.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And I was super lucky to have this spot of watching this moment as a lifelong Cubs fan of, you know, that area right behind home plate in the upper deck, underneath the press box, the old press box. There's that bar area, right, where they set up a few little stands of bars, and people can walk out there and sit. Cap, we had to wait 15 minutes for Kelly to get in the locker room, and Cap and Holly and I think even Ryan Sandberg were doing the post-game show, but they wanted a live presence. So my job was to fill the 15 minutes from the final out to when Kelly could get into the clubhouse and start getting interviews. So right before it happened, I'm watching all of the cops on top of horses, and I see Clark and Addison just filling in. Like, the bars are emptying before the game's even over. And I'm like, wow, I'm glad I'm up here.
Yeah.
But I took 10 seconds when it got to the end of the game, and I ran out and watched that last out because I was not going to. I said, I'll be back, and I ripped out my earpiece, and I went out and I watched from the top of that level right under the press box. Mm-hmm. And again, that Schwarber's number 2, but that's the loudest I ever heard Wrigley Field. And of course, with good reason, they're going to the World Series. Yeah. So,
speaking of which,
number 1 is no big surprise.
It's the most easy, like...
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
People forget this, as Corey would say.
Yeah, as Corey would
but the
say.
Cubs won the World Series in 2016, and Game 7 is the greatest game ever played.
Yeah.
And what does Avi's shirts tell you? What if I told you 17 minutes of rain would wash away 108 years of tears? And that
was
is
Braggs' sign, to his credit.
It is. You Braggs.
I do love
and
how,
you know what was great is that he doesn't ask for the credit.
No.
I do
Credit
love
to him
how,
for not asking for
Braggs'
credit.
sign.
Yeah.
I do love how people will use that rain delay as like, why are you so proud of it? If it wasn't for rain delay, they wouldn't have won it. It's like, well,
I don't know. We'll never know.
It happened, right? Like, you can't take it away just because of rain. Like,
what I always say when we look back at this game, what I always say to denounce that is the fact that Cleveland had the 9th inning with all the momentum, and they did nothing.
Yeah.
And Chapman was gassed because Joe Madden had overused him going into Game 7. And they couldn't. They had the 9th inning to win the game.
And they won 1-2-3.
I don't know if you can go back on Baseball Savant or something and look at that game. I'm pretty sure Aroldis Chapman threw majority sliders in that ninth inning. And obviously, at that time, we knew Chapman as this fireballer, like can throw 101, 102 mile per hour fastballs. But like he was gassed because of being overused. And he somehow, after giving up that home run to Rajai Davis, locked in and gave them another inning.
And it was
that, to me, that's like underrated. Like, it's not talked about enough that he was able to go back out there and keep the game tied.
And it was the top of their order too, going into that bottom of the ninth.
Like the one moment from that inning that I think a lot of people,
Kipnis, Lindor.
Yeah, the one moment people talk about from that inning alone is Kipnis hitting that foul ball
because
that
the
everyone
TV
thought was
angle
going.
wasn't really close.
TV
but
angle was terrible, but
and on TV, everybody saw it, including me. I was like,
no,
I definitely lost
and
a couple
everybody
years.
thought it even before it happened. Like, oh man, the local kid growing up a Cubs fan is gonna be. We've seen it too many times. It's not gonna happen, and I think the Dexter Fowler leadoff home run is also that's one of the biggest moments in Cubs history, just based on the fact that, man, it's Game 7. This is
Corey
it
Kluber
for these
too.
two franchises. Yeah. And for him to kind of just relax everybody, if you can relax in a Game 7 of the World Series, that's what happened.
I think one of the other, I mean, obviously, like one of the other best things about that was the fact that so many of the guys that would like go on to like this golden era, like this was they were the big players of the era. Like Rizzo had a couple hits, Schwarber. This is the World Series when he comes back and he had that big hit late in the game. Chris Bryant running like a madman, like he's just going from first to third or first to home on a single and scoring type stuff. Wilson Contreras double off the wall, Javier Baez home run. Just some of their biggest players of this era.
Ben Zobrist double.
Yeah, Ben Zobrist double. Like they all showed up in that game and all pretty much contributed to winning that game. Like,
and it, you can mention all these players, but I think the game really tells a story of
Kyle Hendricks obviously starting that game as well.
Right. Well, the game tells a story of how the Cubs built their team and got to that point because every single player made an impact in that game.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Starting from you go, we go.
Well,
you go, we
Albert
go. Albert
Almora tagging up from first base,
from first base.
To get into scoring position off, I think it was a Chris Bryant fly. It almost left the park. It would have been an incredible moment, but he tagged up on that play. Yeah. Ben Zobrist double, Miguel Montero, the insurance run. Yeah. And then C.J. Edwards and Mike Montgomery to get the last three outs.
Mike Montgomery to get the save in the World Series. And then again, it's like this is, on its own, the way that game went was fantastic. It was a great game. And add in the fact that it was the Game 7 of the World Series to end the 108-year drought. Like this, it's not even. I mean, again, it's opinion, but like I truly believe this is the best baseball game that's ever been played. Whether it's the way the game went and actually being a very, very good game, combined with all the all the context and all the meaning behind it, like I'd put that up against any other game in baseball history as the best game.
It's not just the history of the Cubs; it's the history of Cleveland.
Yeah, because they had
in baseball,
a 70-year
the history of Cleveland. Too. Yeah, but I'm saying like, I get what you're saying now. Okay,
the drought to the two teams,
too, yeah, I get what you mean now. But yeah, no, again, it's greatest baseball game ever played. Like it's in my mind, no doubt about it. But
and just like Game 6 of NLCS, like we all for sure remember where we were when they won this game. I'm like, we'll tell. I will tell my future kids about it. It will be the bedtime story for every single day when they're born. You're putting them in the crib. Well, son or daughter, let me tell you about this night, November 2nd, around 11:45 p.m. Right? Like this is a story you tell your kids and your kids' kids and their kids' kids forever. Like it's like Ryan said, one of the greatest games ever played. Greatest game in Cubs history.
So what did we leave off? I've watched the live YouTube chat. I've seen people that I knew would be angry. I know they're angry. First thing to remember about these lists.
There's only 10 of them.
There's only 10, and this is our list.
Yeah.
It's not your list. It's our list. That's the whole point. You can have your own list. Yeah. But for us, they let me put in 1984. They let me put in Sammy 61, 62, even though Ryan wasn't even watching those games, right? Mm-hmm. So we could have put in other, if you're saying in the history of the game, which we are, this is our list. Other people would put in Homer and the Glowman. Other people would put in Merkel's Boner. Like
the Cubs may not
old
win.
school games. I know Godfather, he was at that one.
Cubs may not. Actually, I don't think they have a chance at winning the 1908 World Series without Merkel's Boner.
That's
so
right.
It is a huge game, but like
it is a huge game.
A little bit of recency bias, obviously.
We didn't see it. I only know a little bit about it, and I didn't have a lifetime of Cubs history going up to it. So they're not in it. 1969's not in it. Believe it or not, I still wasn't born. But I'm sure there were a couple games that in that list you could maybe substitute out. So my challenge is, if you have a game, whether it's Miggy Montero's Grand Slam, which is one of the other
ALCS.
great super loud moments, maybe also some people would argue the loudest moment.
Zambrano's
Which
no-hitter.
game are you taking out? Zambrano's no-hitter. What do you take?
Arrieta's no-hitters.
For our purpose, when we tried to whittle it down, the reason that Arrieta's no-hitters didn't make it and Zambrano's no-hitter is that they were individual performances that were not as spectacular as the Kerry Wood game or not as meaningful as the Sandberg game. Yeah. Or 61 and 62 by Sammy at Wrigley with a walk-off by Mark Grace in the greatest home run chase of all time. I can make an argument for Miggy because it's a playoff game. That would be one that I could possibly substitute out and then take, I guess, Sammy out. But the no-hitters, I couldn't. Arrieta's, one of them was against a bad team. Dominant, loved the game, but it was just about Arrieta.
13-0 I think was that.
Yeah, it was like 16-0,
16-0,
something like that.
Just about Arrieta. It was not anything super special, right? What else did we leave off? The comeback games against the Rockies, comeback games. What about Corey wanted the game against the Mariners where Lester walks him off with a bunt in 2016?
That's probably the best regular season game of 2016.
It's definitely
Ernie Banks' 500th home run.
Yeah.
And I think if you wanted to go historically, we said, okay, what about Sammy, first game after 9/11, comes out waving the American flag emotionally to all Americans that were alive and watching that, and then hitting the home run and carrying the flag around. It's a moment, but it wasn't necessarily the whole game.
No one remembers the game. They just remember, like,
they won.
But
I didn't.
I was going to ask, did they win?
They did win the game, but it wasn't.
It's just a moment. Like, if we did a list of moments, perhaps that's on.
Rick Monday saving the American flag could be a moment in Cubs baseball, but it's not. It's not a top 10 game of all time. I wish we had 20,
not to us,
but they told us 10, so we picked our 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
Yeah. Again, the challenge is, how about you tweet at us or message us or comment in the chat what you would.
Well, Godfather wants the Sammy stuff out.
Well, Godfather wants like 4 games in 69, I think he said.
Sure. Or you might just want Miggy Montero. Again, if you want to make the list just postseason games, that's okay. But it's tough to make a list without Kerry Wood and Ryan Sandberg.
I think Montero was the hardest one to leave out for us.
Oh, yeah, it was.
That was
But like, what other one are you taking out? Arrieta against the Pirates?
No.
That whole run of 3 years might not even happen if Arrieta doesn't.
I think, was it Bootzilla earlier that was talking about? I think he just said it again, the 2017 NLDS Game 5 against the Nationals.
Oh, the Arrieta.
Okay.
Like
his last start as a Cub.
I don't necessarily know if that's in my top 10, but it's
my heart stopped in 2016. I don't remember anything
I think
after.
if you're talking about 2017, you can argue Game 5 against the Nationals. That game was as wild as Game 7 was. It just didn't have the same implications. You said Dodgers.
I said Nationals.
I thought you said Dodgers.
No,
he said Nationals.
No. The 2017 NLDS Nationals.
Oh, I thought you said Dodgers. My bad. Anyway,
so that's what Bootzilla
And we
was
left
saying
off
earlier,
the Esteban Quiros game where I won.
We left off the John
extra
Baker
who he got
game.
points.
Henry Blanco's walk-off in 2006.
They all got left off. So that's the way it goes.
I would say if we were to add another regular season game, Chris Bryant's walk-off homer against the Rockies in 2015 was a pretty big moment because it led to winning a bunch of games. But
that's all.
Yeah.
We think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
The CHGO Ranks content series presented by Miller Lite. Thanks to them, the top 10 Cubs games of all time. Head to social media to let us know what you think. We appreciate it. Until next time, fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.